That's great. Well, thank you everyone and welcome to, I believe it's our 5th Wales Allotment Forum. As we mentioned, we are expecting a few extra people today, so hopefully they'll join in when they are able. Myself, I'm Nicola Perkins and I am the Joint Wales Manager at Social Farms and Gardens. And Social Farms and Gardens hosts the Resilient Green Spaces project, which is a Welsh Government Rural Development Plan funded project ending this June. And it has multiple work streams, including allotment creation and regeneration. So, and I manage that particular work stream. And this has given us the opportunity to host this forum and to bring people together on a quarterly basis to look at, to discuss allotments, all things allotments, and particularly how we can increase the provision and the quality of allotments across Wales. So part of the Resilient Green Spaces project has had some capital funding, and we've been able to so far support about 15 different allotment sites with the creation or regeneration or safeguarding of around 300 plots across Wales. But as we speak, those groups are busy spending the grants, and hopefully as time comes on, we will be starting to get final plot numbers in terms of creation. And also the following, our next meeting in June, we'll hopefully be doing a bit of a celebration as to some of those projects. In terms of the forum, it is really meant to be your meeting. So I really don't want to have to, to talk. So if there are particular things that people would like to discuss during this meeting, then the agenda is relatively free and open. We were hoping to have a bit of a discussion later on around access to land, which was going to be hosted by my colleague Katie Trent, who runs our Community Land Advisory Service. So what we found in previous forums is that there hasn't necessarily been a very clear sort of ask for the agenda. So we've sort of put together a few different bits and bobs to try and get the conversation started. But I will just throw it open to the floor. Is there anything specific that people wanted to share during this meeting today, whether it be an update on their project, any questions or requests for support, or anything? That made one person run away. So Robin.
Right, can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Hi, right. Did I hear you say, that you were winding this project up by the end of June?
We are at the moment. We're hopeful that working with Welsh Government, we may have a little bit of funding to continue to facilitate this network. I think with any forum or network, we obviously had the opportunity through grant funding to be able to start it up, invest some time into developing it and see really what the merits are. So yes, it's understanding really what the need is going forwards.
Well, for reasons I won't bore you with, I wasn't able to attend the session at the allotment site in Bridgend in November, wasn't it? November, December. Yeah. Do you plan to run any more of those, particularly in South Wales? Yeah,
so just for the benefit of the other ones on the call, we ran some allotment management training sessions in person. We ran these, there was a couple at the beginning of December, one in North Wales at Nantyporth allotments. We had 16 people attend. We ran the one down that you were talking about, Robin, at Badgersbrook allotments in Bridgend, and that was, we had 18 people attend. And then we ran a final one over in West Wales in Lampeter, which had 20 people attend. So we were really happy on those turnouts. We were considering doing, so the types of things that were covered in that were finding land, permitted development rights, governance and types of management, tenancy agreements, plot sizes, and then going into sort of water, composting toilets, animals on site, biodiversity, etc. We were thinking about running the individual sort of topics potentially as webinars. But I mean, Robin, was there something specific that you really wanted to gain an insight into?
Yes, everything. Because which leads me, I'll hog the mic for another couple of minutes, and then that's me done. I've became a community councillor in a couple of years ago at a by-election, and I've picked up the project of developing a site for which we have had planning permission for allotments for about 6 years now, 6-7 years. This, as to why nothing has been done with it, I won't bore you with. It's a sad and sorry story, but anyway, I've been picked up the tab of trying to get this thing up and running. So from a fairly narrow knowledge base, one of the questions that has come up is as to whether do we want a set of allotments for a community. 30 allotments is all we could have for a community of 3,000 people, or would a community garden be a much better idea? If so, what do we need to do to change the planning permission from allotments to a community garden, if anything?
Well, shall I answer that now, Nick?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, so Robin, I would say that you won't need to have alter the planning permission. I mean, it depends what the terms of the planning permission are. Can I suggest, though, actually, that you and I communicate directly after this meeting, and you can forward me any details about what the terms are, because as probably many of you might know, with planning, it can be very specific, and it can be, rather
very loose, yeah.
And it can be very individual, and according to the interpretation of the local authority that has, that decides what's development, what's not development, etc., etc. So it's something that is probably worth a little bit more, one-to-one kind of picking through, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
If Maggie could forward me your email address, is that good?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you very much indeed,
Okay.
Kate.
Actually, could I, because we haven't really done introductions, could I pick on somebody else on this meeting, who is Richard? Because Richard's based at Cultivate, I believe, in Newtown. And actually, I think the model that they've got there is fantastic, because what they've done is they've got everything, haven't they, on one site, and it's a relatively small site. Did you want to just give a little bit of a background into your site? Sorry to pick on you.
That's all right, Nick. I can say it's my first forum as well. So I'm happy to give a bit of a background of what we do over here. So we've got a site in Newtown, Powys. We've got buildings, and we've also got land here as well. And we're based next to our college, which is an agricultural and catering college. And it's worth noting that, because it does mean we have quite a good relationship with them. And ultimately, the site we're on is their site. It goes through a bit of different landlords on the way, but it's their site. They hold the freehold on it. On site, we've got micro allotments. So we've got 47 micro allotments on site, which we've been renting out for probably about 10 years now, I think. Quite a long time we've had them here. And we've been lucky enough to just get some new funding from Resilient Green Spaces to renovate and build new allotments on site as well. So we've gone for renovating some we've got, but then we're creating some brand new ones, 10 in total, that are also, some of them are going to be for less able-bodied people. So they'll be able to actually not have to bend down quite so far to use them as well. But we've also got forest gardens on site. We've got dipping ponds on site. We've got a community roundhouse, which anyone can use. We've got small orchards on site, trees trained in different ways. But we've also got a large orchards on some land from our local college. So 200 apple trees on there, Welsh apple trees, apple dessert, cookers, ciders are on those as well. And then on site in the buildings, there's a range of things. We've got polytunnels where we can grow inside. We've got controlled environment agriculture on site as well. So things like microgreens, micro herbs, pea shoots, we're experimenting with on site. That's a pilot project. And then in the building, we've got a community kitchen. And we've also got a community food and drink production area, where at the moment we're mainly concentrating on apple juice and cider in there, but it's got the ability to also do things like jams and chutneys and dehydrators as well. So it's got a range of things on site, and a chiller unit. I forgot, we turned that on last year, retrofitted an old unit and a chiller unit so we can store different crops, but mainly apples at the moment, store them in there where it's vermin free and keep them going for a long time in that case, and to continue selling.
Sounds blissful.
and busy.
Yeah. You've clearly got more land than we have. We would, as I said, we've got permission for 30 allotments of varying sizes from full size down to sort of half and quarter. And that will use up all the land that we've got for the moment.
Our micro allotments are really, the very micro ones are quite small. They're really starter allotments. So there's an allotment, a county council allotment site in Newtown. We put these into micro ones so we can also, other things we do, we have a lot of volunteer work on site as well, as you might imagine. But for the growers, there's quite a crossover between the allotment holders and the volunteering, and we also do some training. So we got free tools on site to use, and we can train people how to use some of those tools, how to grow. We've got experienced people on site who can say when to sow, what grows well. But also we've got an expert on site, a lady called Sue Stickland, who has done a lot with seed saving. She's written several books on seed saving, is involved in the Gaia project at the moment for seed sovereignty program in Wales. So we do quite a lot of stuff on site, explain how people can save their seed themselves as well to grow it in another season.
Yeah, great.
Richard, how big do you reckon your main site is next to the college?
I think we're about 3 acres really, but there's quite a lot of different bits built on in different places. So there's 3 acres, but there's a bungalow in that, and there's other projects. I should have said we've got other projects on site as well, not our projects, but something called Bike to the Future, where they take in bikes, do bikes up and specialize in cargo, electric cargo bikes and electric bikes. The Shed project, which sort of came out of a Men in Sheds situation, but it's a separate organization now where they take in lots of different wood and turn it into other wooden things as well. So there's lots of different other things happening on site.
Yeah. Robin, how big do you think your site is?
You're on mute.
It's quite unmuted.
I think you must be looking it up. Robin, you're on mute.
You're quite right. I am looking it up.
I will just mention that the model.
Carry on, talk amongst yourselves for a minute there.
I will mention that the model that Cultivate have used with the microplots actually has influenced our way forwards with the Resilient Green Spaces allotment project, because actually micro allotments, I mean, the size of allotments is traditional sized allotments is huge, and actually for today's use, half plots or quarter plots is perfectly sufficient. But actually, if you're looking at potentially getting more people onto the land, generating those skills, then the opportunity to use microplots, something a little bit smaller, means that more people can get on the land, and actually you can grow, I'm sure Richard will vouch for this, you can grow a huge amount in those microplots, can't you? And if you are a working family, then yes, it will certainly keep you busy during your spare time.
Maggie, can you pull up a photograph of the micro allotments at New Cultivate? I wonder if there's something online. I don't know if that's useful.
I'll see what I can find now.
Does anyone else want to share their space or where they're at with their allotments?
Or are you new to allotments is the other option, which is just want to find out about more.
You think this would jump out at me, wouldn't you? This is a Borough Council document that I'm looking at here.
So it's not streamlined by any means.
No.
So I will just mention, I can get into it, our resources page. Share screen quickly.
I'll give you the dimensions.
So if you go to the Social Farms and Gardens website then and type in, I think it's under Wales, you'll come up eventually with the Resilient Green Spaces project. In fact, you can Google this directly as well and it will come up. And there's a bit of an overview of the whole project and the different work streams that are operating under that project. The first work stream is allotments. And if you go to there are, you have to ignore the expressions of interest because those are now closed. So we'll be updating our website very soon. But if you continue to scroll down past the allotment forum information, you get onto resources, allotment site management toolkit. So even though we've tasked poor Robin with trying to find out the size of his site, we'll make sure that we send you these links later. But what I wanted to say was that the training that we delivered around managing the allotment site is actually something that we developed for Welsh Government back in, I think it's 2016, and we rewrote it in 2020 to update information particularly around planning and some of the changes. But the guidance document here is around managing allotments covers a whole host of different topics and is a really good starting point for groups moving into managing allotment sites. There's
I looked at that early on and sort of I have a note of that site as something to go back to once we've clarified issues such as I've already raised. Anyway, I can tell you that the site is 35 meters wide by 165 meters deep. What that translates to in terms of hectares, I cannot work out off the top of my head.
No problem.
But somebody, I'm sure Richard could. Yeah. He's not, I don't think he's biting.
I'm on mute. I said, not off the top of my head, I can't. What did you say that wasn't hectares again? And I'll work it out while we're on the call.
35 wide by 165 meters deep.
Okay. Just need to find a pen in that case then. 35 by 135.
165.
165. Okay, I'll have a think.
And the current plan is for 30 allotments, of which the whole thing's split in half. So that's 17 and a half. The allotments are 17 and a half meters long by what? That's 15 into 165. What's that? 11 deep. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Not more. It's about 12 deep. 4 of which, or 8 of which, at the most convenient end, it would look like microplots.
Perfect. So while Richard is busy trying to calculate the size of your site, Robin, where are you based in the
In
world?
Sully, between Penarth and Barry, part of the Vale Council area, Sully and Lavernock Community Council.
Yes, well, getting in touch with Katie after would be really good, and we can
Right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Training. So at the moment, there aren't any plans to run the training. We were considering doing them online if we felt that there was demand. So it was, waiting and seeing. But yes, we'll be able to keep in touch with you.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I guess, sorry, Nick, just saying, I mean, it would be great, if we could, because obviously over the course of running these forums, we've had different people, drop in for different sessions or whatever, but maybe we could send out a message to everybody that has participated and asking them if they would like to have sort of specific topics covered as a way of kind of being able to prioritize what resources we put into. I don't know if that's maybe a useful idea to kind of,
that makes sense. Send out a poll or something to
yeah,
vote for. But Robin, you would vote for everything, would you?
Yeah, just about.
Great. Okay, so Last chance for an open floor at this time, if anybody wants to bring any further things up. Otherwise, I'm planning to share a couple of case studies and then we'll get into a little bit more of a discussion.
Yeah, Kirsty just and I exchanging a few messages in the chat, so that's in there. Perfect.
So what I just wanted to make people aware of is resilient green spaces. The primary aim of all of the different work streams is to get more communities using and accessing land. So that includes upskilling, sort of growers of the future. It includes giving the resources, the skills and small capital funding to orchard and allotments to create new sites. We're in the process of doing a land purchase as well on behalf of the community. So what we wanted to do really as a legacy for this project was to make sure that to sow the seeds of ideas in landowners' minds that more land can be used very effectively by communities. And there certainly is the demand out there, but there's often a number of barriers with trying to access it. So we've run one event so far that was specifically aimed at private landowners, and this was run at the beginning of February. We had 23 different people attend, and this was a showcase, so lots of short videos to cover lots of different land uses, which did include allotments. We're going to be running another event on the 25th of April from 10 till 12, which is a showcase for public landowners. So that event's going to be targeting the local authorities and the community councils as well. And I believe there's quite a number of people, possibly even 30 or so, that are already registered for that event. Oh, Robin, yeah. Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry, what was the date for that again?
That's Tuesday, the 25th of April from 10 till 12. Maggie, is that on the website now? I know the date changed originally. Great. Yes.
I'll send the links in the chat now as well.
Okay.
So that would be relevant for some people on this call, but certainly a reoccurring theme that we've had during these forum meetings is that it's sometimes very difficult to get in touch with people certainly from local authorities. And this is probably a challenge for community councils as well, negotiating leases, that actually knowing who the right person in the local authority to talk to is often very difficult. And then we gave a presentation at one of our previous meetings from a local authority officer explaining how they are very much up against it, juggling many different roles. So in allotments, unfortunately, is one of those roles that very few councils, if any in Wales, actually have a dedicated allotment officer. So it can be very challenging, but we're hoping that this and also some ongoing capital investment money from Welsh Government, which we've now had confirmed will be offered to local authorities next year, and it has been for the last few years. That will hopefully start to yield some investment in these sites, and there's actually no reason why communities can't be talking to their local authority if they can find the right person to talk to about these Welsh Government allotment support grants. So most of them, they are based on population size, and they're around between 20 and 30,000 pounds going to local authorities each year, with the primary aim of improving their allotment provision. So what I wanted to share on the line of sort of the concept of opening up land was initially a short video case study that was created from one of my colleagues around a dairy farm that has now created some allotments on their site. So I mean, part of the forum is to share different models for allotments and how they can be created. So this is a site based in South Shropshire, in a village called Cleo Mortimer, and with a population of about 4,000 people. These are on a private farm, and a half plot is charged at £30 for a year, and a full plot is £50 for a year. So I'm going to just share a short video because it's always nice to have a bit of a tour. Hope there is some sound on this, so hopefully people can hear this. And Maggie, if you can just give me a thumbs up when I press play and it works okay.
Bore da, and welcome to Clibri Mortimer. We're a small town of about 4,000 population in South Shropshire, the village down there. I'm just going to show you our allotments. So they're on a farmer's field, a dairy farmer. So come summer there'll be cows out here and cows through that gate there. And then the allotment site just up here is run by the Clibri Mortimer Horticultural Society, who lease out the space from the farmers, and I'll just show you around. Yeah, we can go through it now, but we have had instances of cows invading from the neighbouring field where gates haven't been left closed, so that has been an issue. So there's plenty of protection now to make sure that the cows do stay out and don't eat all the cabbages. But in we go and have a little look at the site. So as you can see, different allotments kept in different ways. So we're looking here, a full-size allotment, but there are options to take half. We've got some good leeks and bits and pieces going on here. So there are plots that are in disrepair, there are plots that are underway.
The sound's gone for me. Has it gone for anyone else?
I think it might stop partway through actually. I think this is just the guided tour without children's sound.
Some of the plots have quite a bit of infrastructure. Some of the plot owners have been here for many years. So there's fruit cages and what have you. But you will notice that none of the plots, individual plots, have sheds. And that's because there is a communal storage space just around here. So each of the plot holders has a small area in one of these two sheds. And there's also a bit of communal composting and a communal manure pile, which I'll just show you over here, and a communal water butt.
So while I'm sharing my screen as well, I'm just going to share with you a second alternative case study. So this case study was one of our little videos that we shared in our private landowner showcase. I'm now going to share one that's more specifically around for the public landowner showcase. And this is a site in Blaenau Gwent, and it's called the Gethley Curragh Allotments. And the site fell into being derelict a number of years ago because basically the interest in the allotments dwindled. The site started to become overgrown, which meant that new people were less interested. Historically, there was a lease agreement between the local authority and the local community council, and now the relationship between the community council, the local authority, is restarting again. They are renegotiating a lease currently, and there is a new allotment association. So I'm just going to share a comment that I got from a Zoom meeting with the Community Council, and also a comment from the Allotment Association about the work they're doing.
Okay, we were approached by the then treasurer back in January 2022, which is just over a year ago. After we'd sent out our letter to say, this is your invoice for this year's rent. And she basically turned up and said she was the only one left on the allotment site and she was going to give it up. So there would no longer be an allotment association out there. But we'd also been aware of a couple of people who actually wanted to take that over. And then we would then work to constitute a new allotment, a committee and association up there, which we then did. I mean, I facilitated the meetings. They took on a constitution. So all formally notified and recorded. So they then ended up where we've got a formal committee working the allotments at Gatley Creek. We had over a number of years been paying Blind and Gwent County Borough Council £10 a year for that allotment site, but the lease for that had run out a number of years ago and nobody had actually figured out that a new lease needed to be in place. So that was my first task, and that's why the other 4 allotment sites have not done anything with, because I've been involved in trying to figure this one out first to get the legality. So I'm in negotiations now with Blind and Gwent County Borough Council to get that out. That would be the Community Council's lease from Blind and Gwent County Borough Council. We will then end up subleasing it back to the Allotment Association.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, there's about half a dozen members on the Allotment Association. They've done an awful lot of clearing work up there because it was in a complete state. And we've provided them a bit of logistic support. We've spoken to people like Welsh Water to try and get direct water access to the site.
Okay. But we initially, when we retired and closed our business down, we grew a lot of food in our gardens. So on the back of that, we were looking for allotment plots. So we looked around Abertillery for plots to actually grow some food. It came to fruition that there were none available, but we walked past this site on numerous occasions. We've seen that it become overgrown. So we did some investigation and I found out that it was actually leased by the town council. So we arranged then to have a meeting with them and actually take the site on. Initially we were just going to clear a small amount of ground up the top just to allow us to grow, and then bring people on as the site grew larger. But we've had a really good response at the moment. We've got 11 people working on it with quite a backlog of people who actually want plots. So it's become a necessity to start to clear the ground on the bottom section, which we're on now, to actually get more people to grow.
Okay, so that was just a couple of case studies, because obviously it's lovely to see things during these meetings, and so people can relate to their own projects and the things that they're trying to work through at the moment. So, I mean, were there any sort of comments or questions, or people wanting to share anything in sort of inspired by those videos at all? No? Yep. Richard?
They both look really interesting. There's the one, Cleobury Mortimer, looked really good in the middle of a field. Basically shows what you can do, just a green field that's grazed by cattle, and you can turn it into that amazing allotment space. The diversity obviously in the allotments is much greater in just the land around it, wasn't it? You could see straight away. So it's creating that community just really out of a very blank green space beforehand. It looked great.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've managed to support 3 private landowners within the allotment strand of Resilience Green Spaces, all landowners with considerable land who wanted just to do something different and start working more closely with the community. So that's an example. And actually the running costs are relatively low. You've got that choice whether to have water on site or not. That does add an additional slight complication if you do have mains water on site. But if you have a shared communal storage building such as that that's equipped with large water butts, then you've got that option to try and make the site a little bit more self-sufficient and sort of be able to control your costs as a landowner a little more closely.
There's also a fantastic project up in my neck of the woods in Amlwch in Anglesey in Ynys Môn, which is an allotment site that's owned by a local farmer. And the history is really interesting about how it kind of how it developed. And basically it was a group of local people in Amlwch who who were banging their head against the brick wall in terms of getting land released by the town council, the local authority there. And a lady from the town happened to bump into a local farmer who she's known for years, outside the Spar shop, and just said, "Oh, hello," just chatting and stuff. "You haven't got a little bit of land that we could use, Vaughan, have you? Just so we can, start an allotment." And so slowly this kind of relationship developed, and it's an extraordinary site. They've now they've won they've been awarded a Green Flag Award, which is quite unusual for a kind of community allotment. But they've got allotments, they've now developed a boardwalk, they've opened up ponds, and originally the interest, I think that the reason why the local farmer was sort of prepared to release some land was because there was this already long-standing personal relationship. But actually, this particular plot of land backed onto the back of some gardens, and it had been allowed to sort of be overgrown with a lot of gorse and other scrub vegetation. And I think the fire services had been sort of hassling this farmer to clear it because they were concerned that should it ignite, then there would be damage caused to these properties that backed immediately onto this sort of the end piece of some of his land. So I think there was a little bit of a kind of motivation to, from the landowner's point of view, a little bit of an opportunity for, some of that work to sort of be done. But ultimately, he was just he kind of believed in the vision. And so it's just interesting from my side. So I work for CLAS, the Community Land Advisory Service, with my colleague Lucy Taylor, and we're very interested in accessing land. Who owns the land that community groups can access, and how those relationships develop, how one negotiates for land. So we're interested in that, and then we, as a service, a free service for community not-for-profit organisations or groups, we can then provide advice with licenses and leases, and also planning advice as well. And so we're very keen to support any groups that are looking to sort of first step is finding some land to do something on. So yeah, I don't know if it's an opportunity to just hear either in the chat, if you guys feel a bit more comfortable, just sort of sharing with us, what point you are with your kind of wishes and vision and ideas. We've heard from Robin and Richard already, and Kirsty, we've heard in the chat that she's sort of identified there's not actual allotments in her community, but maybe there might be an opportunity through, I believe there's some conversations taking place in, I happen to know Llanrwst, where she's based, but these things sometimes, you kind of have to sort of throw the seeds out and see what kind of grows, and keep talking to local people and hear and feel where the energy is coming from, and hear what other people want to do. And is there anything, maybe Neil, are you involved with them? Have you got an allotment at the moment? Are you doing any community growing? Would you like to be doing any community growing?
So the situation for me was I was looking around for allotments and things, and I'm based North Gower, so near Swansea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all of the allotments locally, they were quite a distance away, and they all had huge waiting lists, or just weren't accepting anyone onto a waiting list because there were so many people. So luckily, through a friend who runs a CSA, I'd been doing some volunteering there and whatever. He put me in touch with a local farmer, and they agreed to sort of give me or offered me a polytunnel to start with. So there was a lot of clutter and whatever there, but a lot of useful stuff. So I've been clearing that, and yeah, and sort of setting up the land around that as well. And while I was doing that, then there was another chap in another polytunnel, and he's decided to give up. So they've given me that as well, and offered me more land as well on the farm. But at the moment, I'm, you know, I try and do other jobs as well. So I'm a gardener as well away from that. So it's just having the time. Ideally, what I want to do is set up a community-based thing there somehow. Yeah, but how we go about it, I'm not totally sure yet. I've run community projects previously for local community councils and things like that. So yeah, I'm aware there's funding out there and things like that. So yeah, I've just joined really to sort of get some ideas, you know, on what people are doing. But yeah, I'm happy to share what we've got and the land we could potentially develop. Yeah. And
so
see.
I've got so my sort of typical question from a class perspective. Firstly, I just, for those who are on the call who might not know, Neil mentioned the word CSA, and that for those that don't know what that acronym is, it's community supported agriculture, and it's a model whereby farming takes place, but it's involving the community, and the community might either come and volunteer to help with sowing and harvesting, or there might be and a sort of, you know, an involvement where the community actually owns the site, or there's lots of different variations with that, and certainly in the Gower there's some very well established community supported agriculture operations, and generally I would say that CSAs produce great veg boxes. That's their kind of often their sort of aim, if you like, you know, basically providing locally grown, fresh, weekly food to the local community. And so it's that's just to explain that. So Neil, I'm curious, with regard to your relationship with the farmer, have you got a sort of formal agreement that has that sort of says that you have, you know, access land, or is it sort of a handshake at the moment?
Handshake at the moment, really. Yeah. And I have said, you know, we need to sort of discuss about, you know, things and the arrangement and whatever. And they're happy. They've got a farm shop on site, and that we just give them some plants and things to sell there and whatever. But yeah, so I'm not totally sure. Obviously, we're going to grow veg. Possibly set up a bit of a nursery there, you know, those types of things. Yeah, but we've not, it's very informal at the moment, and yeah, so whether we need to set that type of thing up eventually as it gets bigger and we start finding our feet and which direction we're going to go down.
Yeah,
we'll probably need some of that.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's definitely worth you getting in touch with us at Social Farms and Gardens, though, because I think we've got new projects that are starting up. We've got good links with other organisations that may be able to provide you mentoring and things. We've got a bit of a community supported agriculture work stream coming back online, probably in sort of September time. We also work closely with Lantra, who run the Tyfu Cymru project. They've got a fantastic knowledge base or knowledge hub online, and that's definitely worth a Google. They deliver part of the Business Wales contract that supports commercial horticulture, but there is a lot of information on there depending which way you decide to go. So, but yes, anything around involving communities or opportunities for people to get into growing, then we would hopefully be able to signpost you to various things.
Brilliant.
On our Facebook page and website, and probably drop Katie an email after this.
Yeah, I will. Lovely, thank you.
Great, and I hope it's okay. I'm going to just, because we're recording this, I thought maybe if I just read out, we've got an update in the chat from another participant, from Rose. She works with Horticultural Wales, and they work with allotment and growers and producers all over Wales, and she's really interested to link up with Richard, and so she's really keen to possibly come and see you down in Cultivate, so we can, if Richard's nodding, so we can exchange your emails. Rose also said that they've got their own space at North Hop, and that's in North Wales, in Flintshire, and they've got their own hydroponic systems growing as a trial to see what sort of can be done. So Rose, I'd quite like to come and see your hydroponics. there's a couple of people in the waiting room as well. So Rose has put her email in the chat. So we can pull that out and make sure Richard gets that. And welcome to Thomas, who's just joined us. We're just in the process of having a little chat about what people are doing and how they've accessed land. So we've heard Bird R. Do you want to share anything in the chat, or that's fine if you don't? Just always nice to hear where people are at. And Thomas, I know you've just joined, but is there anything that you'd like to share in the chat with us about? Are you growing anything? Are you on an allotment? This is a chance. Oh, hello, Rose. Nice to see your face. Hi. Just to say that Richard has also shared his email in the chat as well. So
I think while Thomas is getting settled into the meeting, I think I'd quite like to just pick up on a couple of times we've had waiting lists mentioned. And it's a piece of work that Social Farms and Gardens has had an ongoing relationship with Welsh Government over. We did a piece of work back in 2020 to look at the number of allotments in each local authority area and correlate that with the population, because there is sort of guidance that Welsh Government offer to suggest the number of allotments that each local authority should be providing. And what they asked us, and this was at the time where the First Leaders Manifesto pledge was to double the number of allotments across Wales. But what they asked us is, can we gauge what the demand is? And we've got obviously waiting lists. The problem that we found in trying to get that data was that waiting lists are very spread out across each local authority area. Everybody does them differently. There isn't one central waiting list for each local authority area. Actually, it can be devolved right down to each site. It can have their own waiting list. But something that Neil mentioned earlier was that he knew the waiting lists were there, but actually they closed the waiting lists, which is really unhelpful for anybody looking at the sector to try and actually gauge what the demand is, because it means that you lose that person, you lose that register of interest. And Social Farms and Gardens has very much campaigned over the last, probably 5+ years for a centralised waiting list, one system to cover the whole of Wales, which means that you've got that option. You only need to put your name down once. We know it's a unique person, so we can count that as one person interested, but there is no closing of waiting lists, so you don't lose that opportunity to understand that there is that demand. And something that is mentioned in our guidance documents that we're not entirely sure how much it has been utilised is that if 6 people or more from a local area want to have an allotment, but they don't have access to that within a sensible distance of their house, they've got the opportunity to approach either the community council or their local authority to request a site. Now, again, this is something that we don't have any data on, but interestingly, the video case study that I showed you for the site in Blaen y Gwent, there's an extended version that I've created with a comment from the local authority as well. But the person that you saw there from the community council, he actually stated that as a piece of legislation, that they are happy to take requests where there are 6 or more people who want an allotment site. So yes, I just wanted to open up that conversation about waiting lists. I mean, Robin, from a community council perspective, are you able to offer any comments on waiting lists?
All right. Given that our process towards where we are now with it, we have a field and we have permission, and that's about it. Given that process has taken so long, the current site is currently oversubscribed, but some of those applications go back 10 years. So, for example, for reasons that I have over which I have absolutely no control, my name is top of the list for ours. Now it's got to come off, otherwise that'll be seen as just me sorting myself out. And being a councillor, I don't have the time for an allotment at the minute. So we're obviously going to have to contact all the original applicants and see if they're still interested. But I don't think we'll have any difficulty finding occupants for it. I'm just, what I don't know and what I need to find out about is how a community garden works as opposed to an allotment site, for which I'll be tapping into your resource. Other than that, I can't really say much. You're asking the wrong person. You should be talking to someone like Richard, I think, about that, because he's clearly got a well-established site. The only issue about waiting lists that I seem to notice is that where there are existing and well-established sites, one occasionally sees plots that have been neglected for more than just a year or two, and the phrase "dead men's shoes" is frequently used to describe the weight you've got to get yourself onto an allotment. Has anything been done about that, or can anything be done about that?
Around sites that around the actual individual plots rather than
that's right, around the individual plots that are clearly not haven't been in cultivation for a little while.
Yeah, so I mean, some allotment sites are quite happy to give them out. I think there is often obviously a reluctance to the people taking it on, depending how much work is needed. Mm-hmm. In terms of one of the things actually, Robin, that we would have covered in the training was around some of the responsibilities of the allotment committee, and the concept of actually putting management time into communal areas, and some people in their tenancy agreements have a clause to say that whoever signs up to a plot also needs to put in a certain number of work days to try and help maintain and cut the grass and keep things under control in the wider site. I would say that it is really off-putting if a site's really overgrown, and you just want to get growing, really, don't you? And you might be relatively inexperienced. A lot of sites don't allow people to use carpet and things anymore because of the plastics in it. So actually trying to get some type of weed membrane to try and kill everything off just to get down to a good starting point can be really difficult. We would always advocate for no dig gardening, using cardboard and mulching and things, which can be a really effective weed barrier. But I think there is an opportunity for the management committee. So this does need to be a sort of top-down decision to actually potentially use work days to try and clear these additional plots, if at all, depending how historical that waste is. If there's any issues like asbestos and things, that can obviously be dealt with, hopefully by the local authority. But I think just sort of trying to plan things like that into the work days can be really beneficial. And it's obviously trying to not let it get to that point in the first place, but it can also, a lot of plot holders are very concerned about weeds and things like that. So I think actually trying, whilst it is useful for biodiversity, I think being able to keep sites under control can be in everybody's best interests, and it makes the whole site look more presentable.
Hi, Nick. Can I jump in?
Yes, please do.
I work for Pembrokeshire County Council and I manage their allotment sites. With regards to the waiting lists, ours, when I've only been in post a short while, and I was quite surprised how large they were. We've got about 100 tenants, but 600 on a waiting list. But with regards to what Robin was saying, what we try to do is, if we're doing like a community gardening scheme or trying to set something up for a community group, is I will contact all the waiting list in that area and ask if it's okay to pass their details on, because, you know, having such a huge waiting list just seems wasteful. So I know already that the demand is there. So each time I hear about something that's about to be set up, I like to make sure everybody knows so that they've got a fair chance of joining in if they want to.
That's hugely proactive. You said you work for Pembrokeshire County Council?
Yes.
And can I ask what your job title is? Because are you blessed at just looking after allotments, or?
Well, only because I'm new. At the moment, I'm an asset manager, so a surveyor for property. It's just one of the hats that I wear, looking after the allotments. And I've got to say, it's my most wholesome job. I love it. So I spend a lot more time than I probably should. But I think the time needs dedicating to it. We've got so many community groups or individuals that are crying out for better provision. And up until now, there hasn't been a dedicated person. So nothing was really being done about it. And I just find that heartbreaking.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic that you've got a proactive employer who sees the value in it. I don't know if you're on at the beginning of the call, because I was talking about the Welsh Government Allotment Support Grants, which is capital funding going to the local authorities. So it would be worth sharing your email address with us, just so we can sort of keep in touch around that and make sure that if we've got communities coming to us asking for maybe finding land as well, the land advisory service that Katie works for, yeah, we're always keen to find proactive people within local authorities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
I was going to add a bit of a story up here. So I'm also a town councillor in Newtown, been looking at the allotment provision in the area, which came out of a conversation with the community we had around developing a place plan over the last few years. So there's a desire for more allotment spaces in the town. So we've been working with Powys County Council, which is our county council. I think there's obviously a lack of resource in Powys County Council to really do much with this at the moment. What we have got, and I only can speak for Newtown because that's, as a town councillor, where I wear my hat in that case, but we've got a review of the waiting lists of the allotments in Newtown now. There's one set of council allotments, so they're starting to look at Powys County Council now about what sort of need there is inside the waiting list for that particular site. In the larger plan, there is the possibility of another site in the town. So we use that formula that came out a few years ago, you mentioned earlier, Nick. And I think we needed sort of a provision of about another, I think it was 30 from memory now, 30 or 35, 40 allotments. If you use that formula, what you'd think for our population size, what we'd need over and above what we've got. But we also weren't sure with the current allotment site how many people are on there, because over time they've been divided up, some have been reduced, but then the opposite, some where they weren't needed and they're going a bit wild, someone has stepped in and taken on an additional plot to their one as well. So they had 2 plots. So we have really quite a mixture in there as well. So it really, if you're looking at how we can get more provision in the town, whether that be a town council or a county council, we didn't really mind too much in that case. And it's really how we might get some more provision for allotments in the town. One thing I would say, we also cultivate the host for sustainable food places for the county. And that's looking at the whole of the food environment across Wales. And in fact, it's in England and Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. And inside that, you as a host, there is also at Neathport Talbot Group of Colleges, our local college, Powys County Council and Powys Teaching Health Board. And as part of what that group have said they would like to do in North Powys is map what community growing there is. So the data for the allotments could be provided by the county council, they're inside that as well, but then also looking at mapping and we'll come to you once we start, if we haven't quite got the person in place yet, but looking at what we know of the community growing across North Powys. So sorry, we're talking North Powys on this one, but also the schools department in Powys are quite keen to know what happens in their schools with eco councils, growing sites, in schools, and just trying to see from the food point of view just how much food is grown in schools and then gets into children and parents, because most of them do give that away or sell that to raise a bit of funds as well. So we're going to just start on that over the next 12 months, try and understand a bit more about that in North Powys, and we'll obviously gain some data about allotments in that as well as we go along.
Yeah, well, as I'm sure you're aware, Richard, we've got a lot of mapping data from
Exactly.
We've refreshed it within Resilient Green Spaces, and we're always trying to add more data. The schools one, that's an interesting can of worms.
Well, we're quite hopeful, because we have got, say, in the partnership, the county council's in there as well. So it's hopefully there's some data we can get from the schools or requests from the schools and see what happens. It'll be interesting to see. My son is in local school as well, and they do grow and they sell the potatoes, they sell the tomatoes or whatever to the parents, and we pay a donation for them to take home. So it'd be interesting to try and sort of quantify what that does. What does that do across North Powys?
Yeah. Also, under another Welsh Government initiative is Local Places for Nature, that's been running for the last 3 years, and Keep Wales Tidy has been running a scheme that awards either food growing or wildlife development packages, which are basically gardens, to a huge number of projects over the last 3 years. I think one thing that would be useful, Richard, I think they've got a map on their website, so you would be able to tap in. They are giving an increasing number to schools, but they would, I imagine, be able to have some type of map to show all the projects that they've historically given over the last 3 years, which again would give you a bit of an insight into schools. And then, yeah, we're still waiting to hear whether that project's going to be continuing for the next financial year, because it has been a fantastic opportunity for projects such as Robins, for example, that if you've got a site, the idea of having Keep Wales Tidy support you with installing basically a garden that includes raised beds, a small greenhouse and storage shed, and also do a design for that. That can be a sort of initial feature in a new space that can then help inspire and develop the rest of the site.
I have just installed one in my son's school as well. So we've just done that now. So it's ready to go for this season. I should just say to Robin, I have calculated the size. So it's about 1/2 hectare or 1.42 of an acre is what you've got there. There we are.
Thanks, Richard. I thought it might be something around that area. It's not fantastic.
It's a start, and that's
it's a start.
You've got to start somewhere. It's better to start small and kind of grow rather than be sort of over ambitious.
Make it sustainable.
Make it absolutely. Nick, we've got some more comments in the chat. So I don't know. Do you want to just Or shall I read some of them out so for the benefit of people who are subsequently watching this on the record? So Peter is based in Bishopston. Is that in Swansea way? I'm not sure. Is that
Swansea?
Oh, it is Swansea. Yeah, great. Okay. He's involved. Oh, there we are. Hi, Peter. You've got a local farmer who has provided 20 plots, 8 by 20 meters. Oh, nice. And you pay £100 a year. Presumably, that's for the whole site. Those 20 plots.
No, that's per plot.
That's per plot. Ah, right.
Of course, of course.
That's why it's like that's right. Okay, that is why. Because I was going to say the farmer has told us he makes more money from renting plots than he would from other uses such as growing crops. Okay, so that's really interesting. I think before you joined I was just talking about a farmer in Amlwch in Ynys Anglesey, who has an arrangement with a community organisation, but he charges £200 a year for the entire site. And so he doesn't do it for money at all. So that's so I would say that's, how does that compare to, you asked the question about the price and how does that compare to council plots? That is, I would say, quite high. So on average, I would say for normally council wise a half plot. I mean, it's really varied. But my local authority, a half plot's about £32 and a full size plot is about £52.
What size?
Yeah, so the half plot size is, you carry on talking. I'm going to get it. I'm going to find it right
Just
here.
roughly.
I've filed it really recently, and I'm not sure. Nick, do you want to just
yes? Well, what I was going to say anyway was I think it does depend on whether the farmer manages the site directly and takes all the rents and allocates sites and things, or whether they then sublease the sites to an allotment management committee, because that can make it a lot easier for them because it's less work. But equally, you would be expecting to have more control over how much you're charging the plot users at the end, but you would need to have a much lower site rent, wouldn't you, to make that?
I mean,
viable?
£200 for a field for a year. It's not like we just get the field. He manages the field. Obviously, he has had to put fencing all around it, and then he keeps water butts, filled all year long. So, and he provides a certain amount of wood chip and manure and all that sort of stuff. So, there's quite a bit of maintenance from the farmer's perspective to do that piece of work. But it seems like there's a business model there. There's this business case that anyone could take to any other farmer in their area and say, you can potentially make more money by dividing up a field for plots. So it might be, when these waiting lists seem to be endless and a bit of a stalemate there, this might be one way of getting things going.
Yeah, I mentioned that we've financially supported 3 private landowners with setting up allotments under our Resilient Green Spaces project. And actually we've had, because of the way that the allotment waiting lists are set up, they actually have anxiety in that they're accepting public money, and what's the guarantee that they're even going to get people onto their site? So it's completely the opposite. And I mean, I guess maybe there's also that concern or potentially support need around the marketing side of things. I mean, once word gets out, it's generally relatively straightforward, isn't it, that if people want a plot, then they go to that place. But I guess it's that whole process of getting started, knowing that the interest is there, particularly for the type of case that you're talking about, Peter, that farmer has put significant investment in stock-proof fencing in that. And have you got like a communal tool storage site on areas?
No.
Okay.
Water is the main service.
Yeah, because some sites, particularly when they're managed by a landowner, prefer having that larger sort of container for everybody to store tools in, rather than to have lots of smaller structures across the site, which can potentially be a bit of a health and safety nightmare. And it can be good when you take on a new plot, but equally we've certainly been on some of our allotment training site visits, we've seen sheds that have collapsed that actually they take huge amounts of work for the new plot holder to remove that before they can even make a start on that.
Yeah, he doesn't actually allow sheds, but he does allow polytunnels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a limitation on the size? I'm guessing there is.
I'm not sure. There are some pretty big ones there. I should say probably 4 meters by 10 is probably the biggest, something like that. Maybe slightly smaller. Yeah. But the other point I wanted to make was, or it might be useful to what you were saying about keeping weeds and grass down. My partner, before we got an allotment to volunteer, a chap called Ed the Veg in Bishopston. He is renowned for running a local food box scheme with a horse and cart. Before unfortunately the CSAs came along, and because they were fully funded, they put him out of business, which is one consequences of EU funding and funding generally. But he used a model of wood chip and biochar and grass cuttings, which produces really good results and keeps the weeds generally down to a minimum. I put some pictures in there, and you can see from those pictures, if you look at some of the pictures, they show the allotments to the left and the right. You'll see they're covered in grass, and ours is pretty clean, and we don't spend, I'm sure, weeding it. But we're the only one on our entire plot that has taken that approach, which it's a bit of work at the beginning. But if you can find someone to drop off a trailer load of wood chip for you, you can do it in an afternoon.
Great, thank you very much for sharing that. Yes, Robin.
Yeah. Quick question on the matter of sheds. I have noticed on some allotment sites, people have plastic boxes that they open like a chest, more or less, presumably for storing tools. Has anyone experience of those? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. We were thinking. So this is instead of a shed, it's
instead of a shed. It looks as if they're going to be easier to. The maintenance is clearly going to be less than a shed, assuming the shed is wood, and there's less risk of rot and decay, I would have thought. Has anyone experience of these?
Hi, Robin. It's Rose, Pembrokeshire County Council again. Some of our tenants use them, and I think they make sense because they're smaller. They fit better onto the plot size that they've got. And like you said, there's so much less maintenance to it. So yeah, I find them really useful. I think one of the stipulations I'd like to bring in just is that they don't use glass on their sites anymore. So if they wanted a greenhouse, that they use polycarbonate instead. But otherwise, we're not too worried if they want a shed or a plastic box or whatever size. Well, smallish.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, it's not written down the actual size of the plot. I just got a list of all the different sites and half plot, full plot. But really I should know, so I will endeavour to go out and with a tape measure probably.
Thank you.
So just a comparative cost. We did a video case study earlier for Clio for private sites at Clio Mortimer in South Shropshire, and the full plots are 15 meters by 9 meters, which is 135 meters squared. And the full plot costs £50 for a year and £30 for a half plot for a year. So that's just a comparative price. And I think that's a site where the farmer manages the allotments directly rather than that then being sublet to a committee. But interestingly, in the other case study, the one from Blaenau Gwent, it mentioned that because there's a lease agreement that's being agreed now between the local authority and the community council, and then the community council are subletting that to the allotments association. He did actually mention in that video that they only charge £10, is it 10 or £25 for the year, the allotment committee for that whole site. So it is very much peppercorn sort of nominal rent. And then I'm guessing that the tenancy money that comes into the allotment association then gets reinvested into maintenance and development of the site, and then covering the costs of water if they're on mains.
I was going to say our micro allotments are £12 a year, but the county council allotments in Newtown I think are still £12.50 a year. But that's the same price. I had an allotment in the town many years ago, and I think probably that's 20 years ago they were £10 a year. So in 20 years they've gone up by £2.50 a year, the county council ones.
Yes, they do have very much have a duty to make it accessible, but the issue is when the waiting lists are so long and you can't get a site, then you end up then potentially private landowners can take advantage and have rather large rents. I think we heard of a site in the Vale of Glamorgan that was asking for horrendous amounts of money, sort of I think it was a monthly direct debit for sort of £30 or something to get a plot, which was just not making it accessible for all. So
I think obviously if you're looking at sort of creating a site, then actually you've got to work out what in fact are the costs going to be, and having a kind of open relationship with the open dialogue with the landowner to kind of look actually, well, what do you need to bring in order to provide enough financial resources to maintain a site, to cover expenses if you're paying for water, etc., or any other sort of infrastructure costs, things. So that's probably why it's just so varied, and there's not sort of a standard price, and things evolve over time, don't they, Nick? And just sort of it's so different.
I think they need to give a whole growing season's notice. I think this again is covered in the allotment management guidelines that on the Welsh Government website, but I think they need to give a whole season's notice of any price increases, so it can take a long time to not only to put any rent up. That just reminds me back to Robin's earlier point around overgrown plots, that actually it takes a long time to evict people as well, to actually give them notice that their plot's falling below standards, and you have to give them due opportunity to harvest any crops that might be left behind. So interesting. Right, I'm noticing that we're almost at the end of this meeting now. We've the last hour and a bit has gone pretty quickly. Are there any final comments, questions, or things that anybody would like to share? Meggie, would you be able to share a link to Katie's project to the Community Land Advisory Service? Because we've mentioned that a couple of times. So any support that you get through that is completely free. It's a Welsh Government funded initiative that's been going for the last 7 years, I believe, and we have guaranteed funding for the next 3 to 4 years.
2 years. We've already had a year, so
yes, I think it's rolling after that as well.
Yeah.
So, but it's a fantastic commitment by Welsh Government to help more communities get onto land. So it's my colleague Katie and her colleague Lucy Taylor as well. So, but there's lots of information on the website, including template lease agreements, and we can act on behalf of communities or landowners to try and get people onto land and growing or managing green spaces as well.
Diolch, Kirsty. In the chat.
I was going to say, is there anything final in the chat that we haven't shared?
Rose, I'm guessing your half plots aren't 125 meters, but 1.25 meters squared. Or certainly not 125 meters squared per plot as a decimal.
In line with traditional allotment size.
Oh, would it 125 meters? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes. Rather than I'm doing my really bad maths, 125 by 125. I'm just like, oh my goodness, that's not what you're saying.
So on the Cleo Mortimer video, it flashed by that there was a little comment at the top, but it says an allotment is traditionally measured in rods, perches or poles, an old measurement dating back to Anglo-Saxon times. 10 poles is the accepted size of an allotment, which is equivalent to 250 square meters, or about the size of a double tennis court. There you are.
I've just worked out that ours will probably be 12 by 17 meters. So that's not a million miles away from 250 square meters.
Okay. So yes, you
So
can
it's 200. It's over 200 anyway.
yeah. So yes.
Mm.
There we are. We've covered all sorts of things today.
Yes, we have. Wonderful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for everybody for attending today. Maggie will send out any links and things that we've shared. Big thank you to Peter as well for sharing those wonderful photos in the chat. It's really inspiring to see some pictures of all the hard work that you've obviously both put in as well to the site. So brilliant. Well, thank you very much everyone for attending. Our next date of the next forum is the 14th of June, and we will be looking in the next couple of months how we keep these meetings going after the official end of our project at the end of June. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good to meet you all. Bye.
Maggie, do you want to stop the recording?